The 2026 Iran-US war, also known by the American code name Operation Epic Fury, is a major regional conflict that initiated. The war was initiated by a massive, surprise joint military operation by the United States and Israel. The conflict, known as Operation Epic Fury, began on February 28, 2026. It was initiated.
This infographic visualizes how the initial surprise attack on February 28, 2026, was executed. Decapitation Strike diagram. A large, central tactical map of Iran displays a red attack arrow labeled U.S. Israeli Decapitation Strike, which targets the Tehran Leadership Command Complex. The power vacuum. Overlaid on the map are the portraits of the three key figures from your reference image. Khomeini and Khamenei are labeled with statuses reflecting the strike's impact, while Mojtaba Khamenei, the central figure on the flag, is clearly labeled as the new figurehead positioned over the target zone. Specific objectives. Inset diagrams show technical flight paths of F-35s and drones, with both U.S. and Israeli marking. 1. This is Spark. Operation Epic Fury. The war was initiated by a massive, surprise joint military operation by the United States and Israel. Decapitation Strike. On the morning of February 28, a wave of nearly 900 strikes targeted Iranian leadership and military infrastructure. A defining moment of the opening salvo was the death of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, which caused immediate instability within the Iranian government. The objectives. President Trump and Israeli leadership stated the primary goals were to permanently dismantle Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile programs and to achieve regime change, following the collapse of diplomatic negotiations in February 2026. This diagram synthesizes the historical and strategic pressures from your text and reference materials. Core causes and pre-war tensions, infographic, the diagram, titled, 2. Core causes and pre-war tensions, early 2026, uses an intelligence screen aesthetic against a dramatic, stormy sky to show 4 critical convergence points. 1. Regime continuity and leadership vacuum. A central tactical graphic isolates Mojtaba Khamenei, the middle figure from your original flag, explicitly labeling him, Mojtaba Khamenei, new supreme leader. Status lines link his emergence to regime continuity, illustrating how the decapitation strike paradoxically solidified hardline control. 2. Domestic instability. A small reference inlay features the Azadi Tower, which is explicitly labeled site of domestic unrest. This visual marker links the failure of diplomacy in Pakistan and Geneva to the regime's weakened perceived legitimacy and violent internal crackdown. 3. Economic warfare and strait closure. A large, bold graphic clearly chokes the Strait of Hormuz area and is labeled, Strait of Hormuz closed. A linked chart titled, Global Fuel Crisis Initiated, derived from your graph, shows oil flow dropping to zero, visualizing the strategic economic strangulation that made the conflict inevitable from a global supply perspective. 4. Missile barrages. The diagram maintains a visual tracker for Iran's retaliatory capabilities. A clear data overlay shows specific stats from your reference image, U.S. barrage success, 75% interception, and Storm Shadow's degradation, Iran, 45%, which decision-makers. This diagram. Core causes and pre-war tensions. Several factors converged in early 2026 to make war appear inevitable to decision-makers in Washington and Jerusalem. Failure of diplomacy. Indirect talks in Islamabad and Geneva intended to curtail Iran's nuclear program failed just weeks before the war began. Domestic unrest. In January 2026, Iran faced its largest protests since 1979. The regime's violent crackdown, massacring thousands of civilians, weakened its perceived legitimacy and prompted a massive U.S. military buildup in the region. The 2025 12-day war. A shorter conflict in June 2025 had already degraded Iran's nuclear infrastructure, setting a precedent for high-intensity aerial warfare. The comprehensive diagram, titled 3. Iran's Response. Regional Retaliation, April 2026, visualizes the complex, three-pronged counter-campaign launched by Tehran following the initial strikes. 1. Multi-front counter-campaign. The central map illustrates simultaneous kinetic operations. A tactical command icon features the portrait of the new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, derived from the reference flag. Data lines connect his command to widespread combat heat maps over North Israel and all regional proxy territories. 2. Missile barrages, tactical diagram. A diagram of Lebanon and Yemen shows specific launch trajectories, Fateh, Ghador, Shahed, and heat signatures with the label, missile barrages. hundreds fired from Hezbollah, Lebanon, and Houthi, Yemen, fronts. Targets are clearly defined: Israel, Tel Aviv, and U.S. Central Command, Qatar, alongside bases in Bahrain and Jordan. Interception graphics from previous references confirm only limited penetration of Israeli defenses. 3. Economic warfare, magnified inset. A magnified inset of the Persian Gulf explicitly frames the Strait of Hormuz. A bold choke point icon isolates the area, labeled Strait of Hormuz closed, mine and naval blockade. The linked data chart, derived from previous analyses, graphs oil flow percent, dropping to zero, visualizing the immediate trigger of the global fuel crisis. 4. Secondary fronts, axis of resistance, specific force icons for proxy groups, labeled Hezbollah, Kataib Hezbollah, Houthis, are distributed across the region, linking to intense combat zones. A small inlay preserves the Azadi Tower as the site of suppressed domestic protests, illustrating the regime's control over internal dissent during the war. The comprehensive Iran's response, regional retaliation. Iran did not remain passive, launching what analysts call a multi-front counter-campaign, missile barrages. Iran fired hundreds of ballistic missiles and thousands of drones at Israel and U.S. military bases in Qatar, Bahrain, and Jordan. Economic warfare. Iran effectively closed the Strait of Hormuz, a move that blocked 20% of the world's oil supply and triggered a global fuel crisis. Regional allies. Hezbollah in Lebanon and other proxy groups in the axis of resistance opened secondary fronts, leading to significant combat in northern Israel.
Since April 8, 2026, a conditional ceasefire has been in effect, mediated largely by Pakistan.
Stay ahead of the front lines. Subscribe to Up to Date Eye for daily strategic briefings.